Salam alaikum. Hopefully you guys are doing well today. I'm decided to do a video about divination, right? I had a few questions speaking about binary codes, but before I can get into that, I'll elaborate on other aspects. We have to understand that whether we're using chamalongos or yamputos or encos or bones, rocks, sticks, whatever that you're using, whatever physical object that you're using, what it is a means to transmit an idea physically, right? Some priests might not use any of these things because they're at a certain level, right, within their spirituality, right? They have strong psychic abilities, and they have the means for that, right? Most of them are born with them. They can see spirits, hear them, feel them, sense them, right? And they're born with that. And they've found a way on how to deal with that burden, because sometimes that can be a very heavy burden to carry. You know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, I see spirits, hear spirit, all of these things, but or they ask for those things and they don't understand what they're asking for, right? It's not easy to hear them, see them, and all day, every day in your daily life. Because if you go down a grocery, lane in the grocery store, and you see all those people, or you're driving, or you're at your job, or you're interacting with other people, you're gonna be seeing spirits and feeling things. And that can be a very hard burden for people if they have that spiritual gift. Us as priests, can we develop them? Oh, yes, we can. But most of us, right, will use physical objects because we might not have that psychic ability that strong, or we wish not to have that at that specific time, because it can be a burden within our daily lives, right? It can cause more headache than benefit. Do we fluctuate, right? Do us priests fluctuate within our spiritual abilities? Yes, right? There's certain processes that we can do that we can fluctuate, and constantly we are, right? Some days, how often we're going in there and what we're eating and what we're doing can awaken us more, hear them, see them, and we know that we have to diet down quite a bit so we can get back grounded, because we have daily lives, right? People, I don't think truly understand what it is to have a psychic ability where you cannot sleep at night because spirits are coming to you, where everybody you see, you get impressions of their emotions, all of these burdens, because in reality they're burdens, and you have to learn to deal with them. So most of us that are working within this aspect, right, or within this spirituality, dealing with spirits and the dead and all of that, we choose to be a little bit more grounded, because you have to have control. Just like anything in life, you have to have control. If you don't have control, negative things can happen. Have that happen to me, or does that happen to most priests? Yes. And those things can be called, like, become a fanatic, being in there all day, every day. You'll lose yourself inside the practice, inside the tradition. And obviously, that's not the reason why you received the Nkisi. That's not the reason why you're having this practice, to become cooked out or crazy and hinder yourself. That's not the reason why we have this. This is to help us, right? And have I seen that, right? Have I experienced it? Yes. Right, that's why it's very important that your godparents, when you receive your Nkisi, they let you know these things. Have I seen other priests, right, who have Nkisis or working within the spiritual realm, they fluctuate to a certain point in their life where they lose themselves, where they can't even speak, they can't sleep, and they're not themselves, right? They're not themselves. They're a little bit too much fanatic. Everything has the right place at the right time, right? So that's one of the reasons why most priests use physical objects to communicate with the dead. Two reasons. I'm gonna say it again. One is because their psychic abilities are not there as strong as they need to be. Or they have the psychic ability, they can obtain it through a process, and they wish to have control over it, which is the most optimal way, right? That's the most optimal way that you can have. Now, whatever physical objects that you use, there's always a system. There's always a concept, right? We said that in the last videos. Concepts are the foundation of everything, and then we build it with practice. All divination systems within any tradition, right? They have a concept. They have the reasons why they do specific things, the functionality of things. And then obviously there's the practice of them casting and the reasons why they cast, all of that stuff, and what those things represent. Within the chamalongos or iyamputu, the 4 coconut shell, la cuatro vitas de coco, that's what we're going to speak about a little bit more within depth. It's the same thing. The primary concept, I should speak about that, right? The primary concept, and I'm only going to go to a certain level, is the Dikenga, Denduansa, the Congo cross, or Yowa, right? Right? Why we use 4? Because it literally represents the Dikenga. There's other priests who use more, 5, 6, 7, 21, 9, I don't know. Coconut shells, you might see them doing that. For whatever reason they use that, those are those linajes. But most people that use 4, or by tradition they use 4, is because it represents the Dikenga. Right, it represents the Dikenga. Most people understand the 5 basic letters, right? Which is Madua, Budelele, Kisalu, Insansa, and Kufwa. They might have different names for them, or they might read it backwards, up or down. Those are according to the lineage and the agreements that they have with their inquisio, fundamento, or prenda. So is there a right or wrong way of doing it? No. It's the agreement that they have with their inquisi, right? The only thing that I can say is that the better system that you have, the more well-defined system that you have within the construction of the inquisis and those agreements, the easier and the more accurate is going to be to divine, the more connection you're going to have. So you might see other priests, right, that they synchronize La Ocha and stuff like that. Everybody, we all say that is incorrect. But we also have to respect that. That's how they do things, and there's no need to fuss for it, right? There's no need to fuss about these things. That's the way he does it. If it works, fine, right? Fine. Why work up for it? Why get angry for it? Or bicker back and forth? What the Dikenga represents in its totality, I cannot go in depth within that, right? That's for initiated people, and this is an open channel. Are there books on it to an extent? Yes, but it represents a lot more. That I cannot explain that, I'll give you one so you guys can understand binary codes. The Dikenga literally represents one of the things that it represents is the cycle of life, right? Which is, you guys might see it backwards, so I'm gonna have to do it backwards. Musuni Kala Tukula Nubemba. Conception, birth, maturity, and death or change. Kimodende Kyamuseki Fukiao wrote the book African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. I highly recommend you guys to read that book. And that's the only thing that I can go in depth with in Yowa or Denduansa or the Dikenga, the Congo cross, of what it represents, right? The circle of life, kind of like Lion King, right? And we're all going through the circle of life, this process, right? The last videos we're speaking about processes and how important it is for us to understand these processes. But everything in this physical realm came here through a certain process. And And it's literally the Tikenga process, or Yowa, or the Congo cross process. And these 4 chamalongos represent the process, and that's when you are seeing those 4 coconut shells within the form of the Dikenga. If we go into binary code, it describes that process, right, of life. All the infinite amount of possibilities. In reality, they're patterns, right? Patterns within our lives. We all grow up. We all go through similar phases according, right, to our society and where we live and our culture. So these patterns are represented by binary code, Tikenga Bisinsus, right? And that lets us know what is hindering, or in what process or why you're there. And the priest, according also with the Mfumba, the priest and the Mfumba have an agreement. They have a language. That's the way we have to see this, as a language, a physical language, right? To transmit the idea of back and forth through the physical objects that represents a process, right? So now we have one way of seeing or interpreting or understanding those 4 coconut shells, kind of like an equation technique, which most people use. Now we have another way, which is seeing it within a process. And then we have another way within seeing it as a binary code. And they all are interconnected to an extent sometimes, depending on the standpoint of the conversation. One of my last videos, I said that it's very important for a priest to understand how to communicate and understand the standpoints and why he's choosing his words and how to understand responses from people. So now we're just going to take it to divination. The same thing, the priest needs to understand how to ask the right questions and how to see them from that certain perspective when the Mfumbe is projecting it through those physical objects. But that's the main thing. All the situations in life, all the scenarios, all the different patterns are represented by all the Dikenga Bisinsus within the circle of life. How is this system different from Laocha and Ifa and any other system that is very easy for us to go from a yes and no answer to a full-fledged conversation and seeing patterns and understanding and giving advice? It's a little bit faster, right? We don't have Igbos, at least within my system. You see, within my system, I don't have Igbos, which means, right, the Ota, which they have a piece of rock or a bone or this that represent things for them to be able to truly find what type of Ireo or Sobo, the way that they do it, right? To find if it's in a positive or in a negative way. We don't, within my system, we don't do that, right? Because that's a different tradition, it's a different way of doing things. Within this system, within Palo, for us to find the positives and negatives is done in a different way. So I'm not gonna get too much in depth with that, but it's different, right? The benefit of this system that I think that is richer, right? Is richer. Is within the process of getting answers. It's just like a conversation. If somebody comes to you and asks you, how's your day going? You can decide to say, it's going good. And that's it, right? That's it. Or you can decide to say, it's going good because of this, because I got released from my job early, or I got a bonus, or whatever you want to, whatever happened to you that day, you can decide to speak it. It's the same thing with the chamalongos, or yamputos, right? The 4 coconut shells. You can ask a simple yes or no question, and the Mfumba can just say yes, and sometimes he can elaborate more on the why the yes through the binary codes and give advice. And all of these is very rich, very rich. It's a whole system to it. So for us, now understanding that binary code, the binary codes in the different forms, right, of the question technique, seeing it within a stage or a process, and seeing things as binary codes of that process. Now that we differentiated that, we can go into at least binary codes, right? Because there are 4 chamalongos, right? And either if they fall up or down, up or down, up or down, up or down, right? They give us 16 different possibilities, right? And in reality, if we're gonna get a little bit more technical, each one of those shells, right? These are not activated. I just use these to teach, right? Each one of those shells, right, represents a bit, right? 1 bit. And a bit is a 1 or a 0, right? That 1 or 0 cannot store information, a lot of information by itself. It only gives you a 50-50 possibility, right? It's either saying yes or no. It cannot store information when it falls. So now that we have 4, right, which you have 4 bits by itself like that, we get a certain amount of possibilities to make the binary codes. Obviously, we cast twice sometimes for different aspects. To see Kala Kiadunga, Sila Kiadunga, to see the whole stage of Enkamomea and Tango within these scrolls of time, which is all here. You know, within this book, it's all here explained that many of you have, because you have 8 bits, which is making a byte, which that can carry a little bit more information, right? And these binary codes, which there's 16 of them, depending whether they fall up or down on the Dikenga, gives us these 16 binary codes, which is Modali, Sambia, Mokumbe, Sekele, Kitoko, Masa, Kolamuka, Muya, Mobembo, Insonsi, Tiya, Kotika, Nyoka, Likia, and Maladi, right? These are the binary codes, right? Which is well explained within the book. But the book is more intended for divination, consultation. It doesn't break down interaction really well, which that might be later in the future for one how to truly interact and understand things. But these binary codes all represent scenarios and situations and carry responses, right? For the Mfumbe, the spirit, to respond back to you. These same binary codes, we use them within our dimangas or batipembas to represent situations and scenarios for the Mfumbe to put there, to put within, let's say, the source, right? Let's just say that within the source of information, because everything that we see, all these waves of information, minikaye, minini, all these things that are vibrating around us, right? That are fluctuating, can be seen as 1s and 0s. And our universe, this physical world, can be understood by 1s and 0s, binary codes in different situations. So it's a way to transmit an idea physically through a physical object. The sharpness, right? How to truly define that, because it'll die it down really well within specific situations. That sharpness to give key details, right? The Mfumbe always provides. That's where the priest doesn't need to have a full-fledged psychic ability, strong, right? Where he can hear him and see him and all of that. He just needs to be at a certain level where he can hear him at least a little. He can hear him at least, or see it there, or get a download or a presence of them to understand the details of what's happening within these patterns. For example, how many of us, let's say, drive cars, right? All of us have cars. But you see, that's within a specific binary code. How many of us are married? Many of us are married. How many of us have children? All of us, most people of us, sooner or later will have children or want children or don't want them, but they're there. It's a possibility, or a possibility that's hindered within a process, depending on right? These processes that your body might have, or decisions and this and that. But the key details, right, of what color your car is, how much it costs, did you get in a car accident or not, all of those details within each specific client or binary code when it's looked at, the Mfumbe gives. Which, that's what sharpens. If you don't have the spirit, you know, he's not going to tell you anything. That is not being thrown and just automatically just being casted there or whatever. No, there's something, there's a spirit there who is projecting that there. And he or it can give detail depending on the pre-psychic's ability, which is how we sharpen, right? How we sharpened the messages or the situations as they unfold in front of us. Within other traditions, they use other ways, right? They use other things to sharpen it, to make it a little bit more precise. But the benefit of this is that you can fluctuate really quick between yes or no question to full-fledged conversation and giving advice. And in the future, I'm gonna be speaking about binary codes, right? Both representing certain stages, right? Stages of time or situations, because you need two. You need two of them to represent a stage of time or a scenario, because all scenarios have a cause and they will eventually have an effect within that, right? That's why there's two. Let me see if I can get here so you guys can understand kind of what I mean, right? Let me see. Kind of like this, right? All binary, all stages have cause and effect. Those two will represent depending on that process, which is here in the book. So I'll be elaborating more about that. I might do one video about Kolamuka or something like that. Or any binary code. So you guys can understand what these things represent. And it all depends on the question. Just like I said earlier, the priest would understand what the messages are or interpret them based on the question, based on why he casted them. If not, it's not communication, right? Those questions, when somebody comes up to you, asks you a question about how's your day going, you're not going to be speaking about, you know, Donald Trump's or the elections or this or that. You're going to respond to their question. Every time somebody asks you a question or sees something, you don't respond that at all, right? You are in a whole other conversation or aspect. That means that you might not be okay in your head, right? What's your name? And there you're saying, oh, did I forgot to take the trash out? Oh, did I do this and this and that? Hey, what's your name? You know, within a specific situation, right? They might not think that you're okay in your head. You might be intoxicated or you might have a mental disease, right? So the question is the most important thing when we're asking. Obviously, consultation format, right? The way that we do the consultation is different than interacting with it, because, and I'm gonna explain it kind of like this. A doctor and a patient. It's kind of like the consultation. If the doctor would have met you outside, right? If you knew the doctor as a friend and you guys, I don't know, went to go eat together or be at your house, you guys might have another conversation about things. Or if he's your father, you see a different conversation or a friend can take place. But when he's doing the consultation for your sickness or why you went to the hospital or the emergency room or to get a physical, there's going to be a certain level of procedures, right? They're going to take your vitals, this and that, to see what's wrong, to make sure all these things. And then after that, the doctor's going to come see you. He's going to ask a few questions about particularly what is wrong and what he recommends or what he's going to prescribe you. That's a consultational form. You see, that's when somebody comes to you and you run a consultational format with that Mfumbe, right, with your Nkisis. And the way you do it, obviously, is in that book. It's a different structure, a different way of communicating. Still using binary code, still using the same thing, right? But it's looked as different. There's a different format. Then when you're interacting, right, with the Mfumbes, asking specific questions, that's interpreted and looked at differently, which is, we have to have that well defined, right? We have to have that well defined for us to understand. So if you guys have any questions about that, please leave them in the comments. Highly recommend to read Kimodende Kyabun Seki Fukiao. Let me see also the do's and don'ts, right? Should I speak that through here? Yeah, let's speak that through here a little bit also. It'll be short, not too long. This is from my experience, right? My experience, I highly recommend not to pick up your sacred, consecrated chamalongos to just cast for no reason or any of that. When you pick them up, it's something serious. Why? Because you are literally nailing down those things within the scrolls of time, right? Specifically if it's for the future. Now, I have to explain that. If not, people are not going to understand. We have to understand that the past, right, is set in stone to an extent. That's set in stone. That's behind us. The moment is now. And the future, we don't know what it holds. There's possibilities, right? So those questions that you ask are based on those things, right? Either the past, the present, or the future. If you decide to cast for the past, it will respond those things, right? Which will fluctuate. It will cause change of that information. For example, if you ask somebody, or a patient comes to you, is my husband cheating on me? Boom, the Mfumba tells you, right? Because it happened in the past. I might tell you, yes, right? Let's just keep everything simple. Yes. If you decide to speak that to the patient, you have to understand that that will have ripples that can cause death or a lot of tragedy if that person's not mature enough for that. The Mfumba can also choose not to just say yes. It can choose binary code to speak and say no, but there's possibilities in the future for these reasons. There's a different question if you say, is my husband going to cheat on me in the future, or are we going to last? You see, that's a different standpoint. Because if you ask the Nkisi, the Mfumbas, does my husband love me? Or am I going to last with my husband or my wife or whatever, my spouse, my significant other in the future? When you cast that out and that Mfumba says no or yes, let's say if it says no, from that moment that you casted them towards the future, things weren't set in stone. The Mfumba had to see probabilities in different situations. Because the future is not set in stone. It's based on our decisions. Our decisions affect our reality. So Mfumba's going to see and be like, oh, or the spirit is going to see and be like, oh, these are the different outcomes and possibilities. And if there's a 50%, 80%, 90, 0, 100, I don't know. Within that standpoint, it's going to respond that. So it says 100% that you and your husband, or 80% that you and your husband are not going to last, depending on this decisions that you're making and your husband's making. Now then Mfumba's going to say no. And you leave it like that, right? All right, that's it. The patient left it like that. Then that's going to materialize. That is nailed in the future. Now that person is going to live it. You literally nailed that into their future. What's the best thing that you can do after that? Most people will just leave it like that, which you should not. You should always then ask, can I do something about it, right? As the patient, can I do something about it? Because they come like that. Can I do something about it? Me as a priest, I will ask, can she or he do something about it? Boom. Yes, if it's a guy, hey, bring flowers from time to time. do this, your hair, whatever the Mfumba's advice is. This is why you're not gonna last with your wife or your husband. Or the other question would be, obviously, can you do something about it, right? The Inkisis. And that's spiritual work, right? Love spells and all of that. We're not going to get involved with that, right? Obviously, they say yes, and you undergo that process. They say no, there's reasons why, right? There might be reasons, initiations, this person initiated, other things, other factors. But the main thing that I'm trying to transmit with this is that within the future, things are not set in stone. Based on our decision, we can, right? We can set things in stone. But for certain other processes, they're not. And when you cast and ask for that future, you're setting that there. If you would have never asked, it was just a probability, depending on your decisions. So that's why I always say, when you go get readings, be careful. Not just with Palo, Laocha, and Ifa. Why are you going to go get a reading and they're going to market both for you? Because they see a possible, because now it's not a possible, now it's set in stone. They nail it there. That Odun, that's what you have there. And that's what you're going to experience. If you don't do that, bull, it's not going to get taken away, and you're going to go through that. That's why they say la palabra dura no cae al piso. The same thing for Palo. Palabra como nunca son manteca, de que son manteca, mundo cuava. Right? They say those sayings, but who's the one who's putting that there? It's those castings, those things. This stuff is serious. I'm going to say it again. I say it in all my videos. This stuff is serious. And I've learned certain things, right? As I went growing up within this, I had to learn that the hard way, right? That no, my godfather used to tell me all the time, do not be comiendo with the Mfumbas or any of that, right? Because people think that, you know, we are in Kisi, we're Tatangangas and all, we have priests, and we're in the room all day, every day, boom, 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 medicine. No, you only go in there when it's needed. You only go in there when you need to, right? There needs to be a balance. If not, if you don't have control, might as well not even have it. This is for adults' responsibility. Any of these spiritual things, within any tradition, do not toy with this stuff. It's specifically the ones that you have to get initiated into. You know, this stuff is not like Wicca, paganism. I don't know. I know somewhat about those practices. Do they work or any of that? I don't know, because I haven't practiced with them in depth. I only read about them. But if you stop deciding to be a Wicca and go be a Christian, I don't think anything will be bad with you. But if you're a full-fledged priest within Palo and you have an Mfumba and treaties and all of that, and you throw that stuff away and you decide to be a Christian and all that, you will have repercussions because of it. If you have orishas and all this and you throw them away, you will have repercussions because of them. These things are serious. That's what I'm saying. These things are serious. They're very helpful. They will uphold you if you uphold it. But you must take it serious. It's just, there's so many informations that I want to transmit about casting. The main advice is cast when it's needed. Cast when it's needed. Bring up situations when it's needed. Which I had, you know, when I was younger, I had to find that. I had to understand that. I had to develop that and understand how to interact with them properly. Which that's the reason of these videos, so people can kind of understand that. I'll go ahead and leave you guys with always uphold our tradition by making the right decisions for our traditions, right? If you have any questions, leave them in the comment. Like, share, and subscribe, right? And I might do another video, right? I might do another video about a binary code, right? So go ahead and hopefully you guys have a great night. Salam alaikum, alaikum salam.